before the stream started because I am not good at that. So what I'm going to do is find the today is a late night day, and I am right here. Welcome. My name is Lee, as in the late night with Lee. That's me. Pronouns they them vibe tonight, but he or she is honestly fine. Kind of vacillate. How are we playing this? First thing to do is do the thing. I'm very sorry for not starting the stream in a more organized fashion. I'm not very good at this. But tonight we're doing Rogue Trader, Warhammer 40k, which is why I have the emblem. So, for those of you who don't know, Warhammer 40k takes place in the year 40,000. Same reckoning as it's the year 2000 here. So, 38,000 years in the future. Long time. After which Earth has developed an interstellar empire, which then fell apart, and then it got reunited by the Emperor, who was a superhuman who existed since before now in that timeline. And, he basically became a god through the power of the warp, although he preached atheism while he was alive, so that's ironic. And his eternal vigilance is the only thing keeping humanity safe from the demons, which inherit the warp, which is the only way to travel faster than light. It is a realm where all thoughts are made manifest, which is great until you realize that humans and other alien species are kind of dark, and yeah, there's a lot of really ugly stuff in there. Certain people have psychic access to the warp, which they can then channel the power into amazing effects, which has the downside of being able to let demons into, which are manifestations of the Chaos Gods, the pure coalition of all humanity's evil. They allow demons into real space via your brain, killing you in the process. So they're dangerous if not used correctly, but also extremely useful. Humanity is teetering on the edge of a lot of things in Warhammer 40k. That is just the barest overview of what's going on. There's so much lore, and I love it. But I know lore dump isn't always the most fun stuff. So what I've been doing is beautiful. Okay. Okay, something really. I'm gonna put you to here. I'm very sorry to do this to you. Hello? Yeah? Okay. It's sweet one. Thank you. I'm really sorry about that. Things are coming up. I promise you, I'm not gonna interrupt the stream for longer than I have to, although this does give me a moment. But what I was trying to explain was that I have built a Warhammer 40k. I've been building up a Warhammer 40k crew. And world building all of their home planets and all of that jazz. And so I've created a ship called Estrus Primus, I believe. Um, and I've populated it with. I've used Warhammer 40k's character creation tool to build up dozens of characters. Not dozens. Um, 5 so far. Although I'm working on a whole fleet, essentially, because there's a whole backstory, and each of the characters has backstory. I've been filling out their home planets. We've just been doing all that kind of stuff. So I thought I'd continue that tonight. Just need to do one thing. All right. Thing is done. Okay. Which means that this will be the last interruption, and then we're going to actually start Warhammer 40k world building and all that cool stuff. I just need to grab one thing. All right, and I am back. I will switch my screen. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for... Okay. We're going to leave you for a little bit to make sure nothing bad happens. Okay. Thank you for being patient with me. Welcome, everyone. I think we should start. We can get rid of this. Okay. Yeah, welcome, everyone. Please say hi in the chat. I always appreciate when people say hi in the chat. But yeah. So I've been explaining was... let's see. My notebook. This is my notebook I've been using. It's falling apart. So what I'm going to try to do is transfer some of this over into this other notebook. This one. So that it doesn't fall apart on me. Oh, that's this. Okay, I see how this goes. Okay, so that's there, and this is... Alright. But basically... Oh, the ship, yes. Bertland, the planet, Farina, who is the navigator. Oh, we haven't actually figured out her house yet. Oh, yes. No, it's the Stevenson house, so it's Farina Stevenson. Grandniece to the head of household, who we've been working on creating Katina, yes. Stevenson. Oh, yes. Her great aunt, who is the head of the house, the magisterial house, it's just a house of navigators. Also, because like I said, we've been creating everyone's home planets. They're, trying to get a background sense for why they ended up on this ship in particular, and how they all came together and their tragic backstories came together. So, if So I've been working on that. If any of you want to chime in the chat and ask questions about what Warhammer 40k lore is, because I know it's a lot of lore and it's coming at you fast. Or just ask questions about what I think on different Warhammer 40k topics. I'm always open to people coming through in the chat. The streams tend to work better when people talk in the chat, because that way it gives me something to expound on and not just kind of babble at you. But, you know, I know it's not always possible for people to be in the... No, that's not what I wanted to do. In the chat, so... Just there-ish. Perfect. Now I just do that. Excellent. That way I can see the Rogue Trader book that I have as PDF and still see the chat. In case no one wants to say hi, which I highly encourage, but not necessary. I know a lot of... there's other fun streams going on, so this might be my last Tuesday late night stream. I'm going back to late night Thursdays. It's just going to be an hour later. I've worked that out. So I know there are other things that go on Tuesday nights that people are also watching instead. So, in any case, let the stream begin. So my theory was, let's see where it was, for Warhammer 40k. We had, of course, our navigator that we'd put together. We had, that was different. Okay, yes. So we had our navigator was our most recent, and we were working on her household, the magisterial house, the Stevenson household. We had the Jarian, she had 3 whole fate points. That was pretty good. The captain of the I believe it's the Estus Primus. Let me just double check. Yes, it is the Experius Primus. Our ship. We have as well a death world named Hamish, which is where Ziel is from, a member of the crew. Yeah. I'm very sorry. So, with all of that, we have our assembled crew. I'm envisioning... my plan was to create a better backstory for Jarian and why she is the captain of the ship. And why she was raised as she was. And then perhaps after that we could roll up another character on the chart and figure out how that ties into our ever-expanding interconnected web of characters that I've created for Rogue Trader, because I love this lore so much and I want to share it with all of you. So, and someday I will figure out a way to make this all into such a way that we could tell more stories than not just create more characters. Sorry, but I think for now, what we have to do is zoom in a little bit on the book so I can see it better. Better first, and then yeah. Let me just... I know according to this, I only have one person watching, and so my number count is often wrong, so it might not be the case. I'll have to Yes, but not until after the stream. So, um, okay. I was trying to explain was, and perhaps I'm doing this wrong. Um, uh, okay. Um, so, uh, basically, I don't know how much of this I wrote down, so I'm gonna have to find that. Um, um, but, oh hey, we have more viewers already. Um, so I was going to see that if I had notes on what the deal with Jarian's father was, because I think that is the so the planet Jarian grew up on was the moon of a gas giant. Um, the other moons in the system were mined for resources. One being an agri world, one imperial world farther into the system. High percentage of the God Emperor as Omnissiah, which is a cult. Okay, so religion in the Warhammer 40k universe. I'll give you a quick rundown, and I'll explain how that plays into Jarian's backstory, if you guys want. If you guys would rather have me, create a whole new character so you can see how it's done, or talk more about other aspects of Warhammer 40k lore, you can say so. I'm in the chat. I'm happy to offer digressions if that's what you guys are talking about. But I want to tell you about Jarian because she's kind of cool. So, but first I was going to say the God Emperor and the Omnissiah. So there are two sanctioned religions in the Imperium of Man. One is the state religion of worship of the Emperor of Mankind as the God Emperor of Mankind, who is which is acknowledges that he was a superhuman an immortal psychic superhuman at some point. So he was born as a human, just a really crazy, powerful, mutated superhuman, um, which and there are a lot of theories onto why he was so powerful, but in the end, it boiled down to he tried to guide humanity from the backseat, from the background. Humanity created this big interstellar empire, and then psychic powers began manifesting, which caused warp storms, which caused difficulty with interstellar travel. That, coupled with an AI rebellion at the same time, kind of caused the this interstellar empire that humanity created to fall apart. Then followed um, a dark, miserable age of 1,000 years that just were really ugly. And then the Emperor finally said, enough is enough. I'm not going to guide humanity from the shadows anymore. I'm going to come forward and claim my rightful place as leader of mankind and make humanity better again. So he did. He conquered Earth. He got kind of bloody. He then conquered the moon, and he went back to Mars. Now, the tech priests of Mars are incredibly skilled, and they hold a lot of the secrets of the lost stage of technology that and other rediscoveries of tech on how to make tech work, which is essential for any spacefaring civilization, including the Emperor when he built this fleets of crusades to reconquer all of humanity, and bring them into compliance with his atheism, which ended up falling apart when he was killed by a civil war that was caused by him not telling his own people about the dangers of the warp. So that's a thing. But yeah. In any case, there are so there's the worship of the Emperor of Mankind, which is the state religion of the Imperium of Mankind, and generally considered the standard. The other facet, though, is the Omnissiah. That's the only other legal religion. There are, of course, cults to Chaos Gods and other weird, illegal stuff going on, but that is heresy, and you can be burned, killed by the Inquisition, which is just as bad as the Spanish Inquisition, but they can destroy planets. So, basically. What was I going to say? So the Omnissiah is the all-knowing, the basis of all knowledge. He is all-knowing, all-powerful, and he is the culmination of all knowledge. And he makes he and his machine spirits make all technology work. So you kind of have to offer prayers to the Omnissiah and any machine's machine spirit if you want it to work, and stuff like that. There is, like I said, it's a very lore-heavy series, so there are actual speculations that it's technically an ancient void dragon trapped on Mars that everyone just kind of, that's sending out mild psychic energy that everyone caused everyone to assume it was the Omnissiah, I think, is the way that goes. But it might be that the Void Dragon trapped on Mars and the Omnissiah are two separate different entities that coexist in the Omnissiah. There is a small faction of the cult of the machine cult, the Omnissiah, that believes that the God Emperor of Mankind is also the Omnissiah. And that is because of the way I ended up rolling up Jaren's character, and because I rolled randomly for all of the backstory elements, and then she grew up on a Forge world, but also was a child of the Creed. So the Imperial Creed being worship of the God Emperor of Mankind. So with that, it made sense that she was part of grew up with a group that worshipped God Emperor as Omnissiah. So tech priests that directly worship the God Emperor. And as such, very sorry. That's where she was raised, on a Forge world called Bertland, which is really a starship repair. They build. It's a shipyard planet, and it takes centuries to build these things. They're not fast to build, decades at the very least. And she was raised by a group of tech priests who worship God Emperor as Omnissiah on this planet. But the reason she was raised by them was because her father left her there. That's how we establish this. It has 2 docks for repairs, the planet does. I don't know if that's important, but I wrote it down. So I'm assuming that it's got to be some importance. The I'm sorry. So Darren comes from essentially a line of rogue traders. So she is, her father had a few dozen children by a few dozen women. Also, shout out to Haas 00312 for the follow. I appreciate that. I don't know if you're a real person, but if you are, I appreciate you following me. Even if you're like a bot or something, I still appreciate you following me. So that's cool. You know. What was I gonna say? Yeah. This is the danger of afterwork streams. But so her father she was a bastard child of a rogue trader. I guess all his kids were bastard kids. And he there's a vendetta against his bloodline, so he would take his children and send them away to be raised by at the age of 5 years to be raised by others, so that they spent the majority of their lives long enough. They had grown up around him long enough to know him and know he's their father and kind of understand the family thing, and then just scuttled off for their own safety to various planets where he'd cut deals and cause them to do this, that, and the other thing. One of the deals he made was to put Jarian in with these tech priests to be raised, and so she grew up there until she was called back to take charge of one of the fleet. As often happens, he has an entire fleet, either him or his heir and oldest son. I'm not less than sold on that. But he has this entire fleet that's, and whenever there's new ships in the fleet, go find one of your prodigal sons to go and run it. So, yeah, that's how it goes. So, did I write, I have to figure a name for that family as well. Was known for having most of his children left on various planets at a young age and coming back to collect them later. Yeah. So, so she had one of her siblings show up and say, come with us, you're back to that. And she had been training as a tech priest, and was less than thrilled to go, but still went and agreed to do it, and now is one of the most tech-savvy rogue trader captains basically ever, because she literally was raised among the Mechanicus, studying and forging things and learning. So that's her deal. So she was pulled back to be the captain of the ship when it joined the fleet, and then they rescued the then and then he also her father also had to pull a favor with a navigator house, being the father of one of Catalina's bastard children as well. But that's a whole other story. He was helping her keep secret the fact that she had given birth to a child who didn't have the navigator gene, because that is huge. That is something that's not done in the navigator household. So that is a big deal. And so she owed him a navigator, so she pulled her great niece, who happened to have come back from mental and physical recuperation after, you know, things went south, and just came on board later that the so I guess Perkas, which is the ship Odette was on, among others, was thrust into working for the Adeptus Mechanicus, and that ship had been working for the Mechanicus and was caught up in a battle with a bunch of orcs that went rather badly. The experienced Primus was able to save them, but it was at high cost, and it was just not something that anyone. The consequences were grave, but oh wow. Okay. So with all of that, yeah, so I just did write that down. I have the captain. I have a number of other. There's Zyle, an arch militant. Harmon and what's the other? Not Adet, who is the other arch militant. There's Zyle and Adet, the two arch militants, and then you have Janthine and Harmon, who are both from the same planet of Visceria, because when I rolled on the origin chart, which I'll actually show you, they got basically entirely the same numbers, except for one. Rogue, nope, not that. That's the origin path. That's this one. Oh, hang on. I need to fix where that is. There we go. Yay. Okay, so that's the origin path chart. Basically, it allows for a, if you want to create a character, basically you pick one of the 6 Homeworld options, or you pick one of the, oh, not quite, hang on. Let me just scooch this over a little bit so you can see the bottom part, yes. There we go. Or you choose one of 8 career paths, and then the idea is, there we go, sorry, it's a little better. You have to go contiguously. So if you go Voidmaster, you either have to have a motivation of Fortune, Vengeance, or Endurance. And then if you pick Fortune, then you either have to have Calamity, or Press Ganged, or the Hand of War, basically. So you have to have one of these 3 bad things happen to you, as opposed to these other bad things that might happen to other people. And then if you pick Press Gang, there's only 3 options of why you ended up in the warp in the first place. And then if you go from there, there's only, a few options as to why, what was your birthright, what did you grow up being raised in. And then from there you find your homeworld, which is what kind of planet you were born on. So yeah, basically you can either go either direction, up or down. For almost every character we've created for this ship so far, I've gone rolled randomly on a d6 for the home planet, and then used a d3 as we went down the line to add more backstory elements randomly. I've been using d3s and or evens odds as d2 to kind of add more backstory elements randomly during character creation, so that there was one from every line, and each one gives you mechanical benefits and certain things as you go, which is fascinating. It's a great way to build a character, especially the built-in tragic backstory part, which is and of course every time they overlap, what you can do is then you can look for connection points as to where characters might have met before ending up on the same rogue trader ship. So, usually you don't roll randomly. Usually you pick either what home planet you want to come from or what career path you want to have, and then go from there. The book does say that non-contiguous options are available, but it's entirely GM discretion if you allow ones that don't follow a path to exist, which I have allowed for certain players, as I've done that sort of thing, including a few supplemental origin path options that were available in later published material that I didn't actually get my hands on, but that is neither here nor there. So I when I rolled Janthine and Herman, actually, they have all of the exact same rolls, except for the last one, except for career path. But that is less than a 1% chance. We actually calculated it out, and it's like I think 0.03, I want to say, is how a percent chance that it would end up all the same, and it did. So I was like, okay, well, they're clearly from the same planet, Viseria, and they clearly grew up in the same highly religious orphanage, but where they differed was who press-ganged them, because that was their trials and travail, was that they were both forced into working for someone else. So they were both press-ganged by different groups of people, and therefore ended up in very different places in life, and then came back together and were like, hey, old friend, welcome. So, yeah. That was just me babbling. I didn't even do anything creative and cool. I just babbled about the characters I created. Why don't I roll up another character, because Experimus Primus needs more characters, I think. At least a few more. We have a navigator, and we have two arch militants, and Adeptus Mechanicus, tech adept, which is bizarre. An explorer, no less. She's staying on the ship because it has a rare artifact from the Dark Age of technology that she's supposed to be keeping an eye on, as it's a holy relic of the Omniscia and should not be, left unattended. So that's what her deal is. Okay, so I'm gonna start. We're gonna start up. Let's go to. Okay. Here we go. Let's start with a Homeworld. So we're gonna do a D6. Okay. Now nope. That's behind. So we're gonna have to go like that. There we go. This is my dice cam. Okay, so I'm gonna move these, and we're gonna use one of these D6s because I don't usually use them often enough. And, oh, sorry, this has to go back up to the top. Okay, so we're going to use this D6 here to choose a homeworld. I'm going left to right. So if we did this, 1 would be a death world, 2 would be voidborn, 3 would be a forge world, 4 hive world, 5 imperial world, and 6 would be a nobleborn character. So I'm going to use this D6 right here. Let's do it. Are we ready? 3. Okay. Let's see what that chart says. A forge world. Huh. Okay. We can work with that. Another forge world character. Okay. I wonder if we're going to end up with tech adept. We shall see how this plays out. Yeah, we'll see how we'll fit them onto the ship somehow. So birthright for the forge is either a child of the creed, which I don't know why that's contiguous for that. A stubjack or a scavenger. No, a scapegrace. Sorry. I believe so. Let me check the chart in the as to I am here we go. Yes, so yeah, it's scapegrace, stubjack, or child of the creed. So what that means, actually I can read them actually. So I could read, yeah, there is a lot of really fun lore on these. So I'm gonna read some of the lore actually, because it's always a fun thing to do. The different types of planet have very fun lore. You were born in the shadow of the Omnisci, and all your life you have been surrounded by the great wonders and dire terrors of the machine god's arts. Ever since you were born, you have been weighed, measured, codified, and tested so that your masters might find your place in the great pattern. This unforgiving process has fitted you well for survival and supremacy. The domains of the Adeptus Mechanicus are many, from the ceaseless industry of the iron realms of the Forge Worlds to labyrinthine orbital and distant research outposts to the nomadic and self-contained void caravans of the Explorator fleet. They are an empire within an empire, distinct and yet interwoven with the fabric of the Imperium since its founding. Their masters are ancient, wise, mysterious, and cold as the machines they tend. Beyond the Forge Worlds, this Homeworld option also includes those born and raised on city-sites, orbital stations, Mechanicus-administered colonies, often called Demenses, research outpost, and restless Explorator fleet. For the rites, rituals, and belief, the Omnisci also govern those places. Forge worlds, such as the Lathe worlds of the Calixis sector, are the beating iron heart of the Imperium and the sovereign domains of the priesthood of Mars. They are given over to the demands of vast macro industries, too vital or rare to be entrusted to the petty domains of imperial governors of hive worlds, and are eternally hungry for new resources to consume. A forge world's wheels never cease to turn. Reactors blaze and foundries thunder unendingly for millennia, turning out refined materials and technologies to meet the Imperium's needs. Forge worlds are far more than the sum of their continent-spanning manufactories, however. Each is blessed with a higher level of technological advancement than the wider Imperium as a whole, and many arcane wonders are commonplace in their baroque labyrinths of ferrocretan steel. Forge worlds also house vast repositories of data and obscure lore, with much of as a third of any given Forge world's entire infrastructure consisting of endless scriptoriums, mnemonic vaults, infotombs, libraria, tending in perpetuity by mindless drones and generations of archive adepts. A Forge world's undisputed masters are the Magi of the Cult Mechanicus, who rule with harsh precision and cold logic. To them, the human menials of their domain are little more than cogs and gears in the great machine, resources to be measured, graded, and used to fit their worth. At their direction, the bulk of the Forge world's population is utilized as skilled and trained labor force, while the brightest and best are inducted into the Adeptus Mechanicus itself. The more militant are chosen for the Skitarii Tech Guard. Those deemed unworthy or irredeemable are fated to be recycled into servitor components, and indeed servitors and drones often far outnumber the Forge world's free will population, such is the price of failure. Despite their mechanics, society, and ceaseless industry, life for average Ford world menial is a little harsher than on most hive worlds. Each Ford world, regardless of its rigidly enforced order and cold reason of its masters, is still home to very human ambition and apathy, still home to vice and virtue. The mechanics themselves, with their cogitator-enhanced minds and iron logic, are still prone to factionalism and schism, often for reasons quite incomprehensible to outsiders. Rivalries and feuds simmer between sects and individual magos, each with his own plots and desires. Forge worlds are not environments that reward, let alone tolerate, weakness in body or mind. To have survived and prospered long enough to leave Forge World rigid society, a character must possess drive, ambition, good fortune, or at the very least be bloody-minded and ruthless enough to have endured. You find yourself in a wider imperial society that is at once familiar and strangely alien, where fools either fear or profane sacred technology and have no understanding of its spiritual mysteries or purity of essence. Nor do they seem to grasp that men can only prosper by the teachings of the Omnissiah, and that survival requires power. Power is knowledge incarnate. So that's the flavor text for that. I always love reading the flavor text out loud to you guys, and I appreciate you indulging me. It's very interesting for me, and I hope for you as well. To hear about it, to learn about the Imperium through that lens. So our so I'm going to roll through the origin chart and read off the different, options, read some of the lore. It's very interesting. While I'm reading the lore, what I can do is then also piece together all of the mechanical benefits to all of them that I will note to the side. Then I will roll on my gender and sexuality chart. I will show you that chart because this is one of my favorite charts that I ever made. This chart. I'll get origin path out of the way so you can see it. Yeah, so basically it's a roll for gender and sexuality. It has been quite a handy-dandy chart to have. And then we have some random name tables we could roll on. And for names, or if anyone in the chat at that point wants to name our new friend, we absolutely could do that. I'm thinking of ending the stream around midnight, just because I don't have a lot of people watching. If a lot of people come in, of course, hang out with you longer. But if we continue to have only a few of you, I really do think I need to go to bed. I do want to share this with you and create something, but it's a whole thing. Okay, so plan is, so that's the Forge World, and I'll just put the origin path back, take chart 1 down for now. We'll roll on it later. Let me bring this up, and so for our characteristics, basically a characteristic is your score out of 100. It's percentiles in any given area. Weapon skill, ballistic skill, intelligence, fellowship, perception, willpower, strength, agility, and toughness. There we go. And they determine what, -5, so -5 weapon skills, which is skill with melee weapon. But +5 intelligence, so that's cool. Starting skills is common lore, tech. Common lore, machine cult. Both intelligence skill. Our untrained basic skills. Which means, it means you can make checks on them even if you don't have any kind of skill in them. There are certain skills that you can't roll if you don't have any ranks in them. Similar Pathfinder in that fashion, there are checks you cannot make untrained. But if you have it as a common, a basic untrained skill based on something in your background, what you can do is then you get a lower check, more difficult check, but based on that, basically. Creator Omniscia, technical knock talent, so plus to any characteristic. Here's something. Stranger to the cult. Although Forge World-born citizens know the Emperor is their god and savior, they see the Imperial Creed through the lens of cult mechanicus doctrine. As a result, they can be surprisingly and sometimes dangerously ignorant of the common teachings and practices of the ecclesiarchy, often failing to offer the clerics level of defense they expect. Forge World characters suffer -10 penalty on tests involving knowledge of the Imperial Creed. So, -10 on knowledge of Imperial Creed. And -5 fellowship. So -5 on fellowship test. To deal with clergy. Starting wounds is... So wounds are, in the game mechanics of this system, which was created by Fantasy Flight Games in the early 2010s, and they lost their license in 2017, so it's really hard to get your hands on a copy. I managed to, but they don't sell it anymore, which is why it was so difficult. Forgive me. Wounds are the measure of health you have. Whenever anything does damage, you first take off your any armor you might be wearing. That reduces the number of damage, and then you have your toughness that takes it down further, and then whatever's left over gets applied as wounds. And if the number of wounds you've taken is greater than the number of wounds you have, you basically start taking very serious, near fatal damage. If you take more than 5 wounds over, you are dead. So 5 plus 1d5 plus 1 plus toughness. 1d5 plus 1 plus 1 plus toughness. Wounds. Okay. D10. Okay, let's roll. So fate points are, how do we do this? Dice cam, yes, we'll take the order. So we just have to do that. So fate points are, basically you get a number of fate points, which equals a number of rerolls every, game session. And if you, yes, you can use them. You can also burn them to do other things, and there are certain career paths that have certain benefits to using fate points, but basically they're very basic things of free reroll. And how many do we get? D10. So let's got 1 D10. All right. 1 to 5. 69 with 3. If I get a 10, I get 4. Let's do it. 4, which is in 1 to 5, which means 2 fate points. Let me just write that down. So I'm going to write, I'm going to have 1d3 here. So what I'm going to do is we're going to roll for the next line of the origin path. Why did that go over there again? There we go. I'm going to roll for the next line, and then I'm probably going to go to bed after that. I love having you all here, and I don't want to cut you off, but I need to go to bed. So, I appreciate you all coming to view, but we're going to roll this first. So, I have three, my D3, which is a fudge die, which is this one here. So it's got two sides with minus signs, two sides with plus signs. I think, yeah, minus the plus is that one, is this one, and then you got two sides with that are blank, that one and this one, this one and that one. The idea behind a fudge die is that it's plus, minus, or blank. So in certain games like Fate, role-playing system, what you would do is you would roll a bunch and you just need to get a certain number of pluses, more pluses than minuses, and then there are different things you can do with that, or a certain number of pluses. And if you get too many minuses, more than half of them are minuses, you fail no matter what. But if you get a certain number of pluses, you succeed, and the more dice you have, the higher chance it would be to, risky. Different things have different rules. I usually tend to use them for D3s because it's easier that way. Because I don't have any kind of cool D3 dice. I'm going to roll. With plus, I'm going to have Scapegrace. A minus would be Stubjack. And a 0 would be Child of the Creed. If we get a blank side and do end up with Child of the Creed, I would consider making them old friend of the captains, depending on how we play it. Alright. Ready? Here we go. Ha! Plus. That's Scapegrace. Okay, this is really good. Let me read you what Scapegrace is, because I think it's fascinating. Lots more lore on different types of worlds. Scavenger. Here we go. Scapegrace. An orphan of the borderland between light and dark, you spent years living by your wits as a Scapegrace amidst entertainers, gangers, reclamators, and other ne'er-do-wells on the fringe of imperial society. Your youth was spent in the great borderland where near outcasts mingled with the shadow figures risen from the depths and thrill seekers come down from safer climes. A good Scapegrace knows that the laws only applies to those caught by the enforcers, that life is worth only as much as is spent on keeping it. You've carried these hard-earned lessons into later life. Survival is the best thought of as gain, with pleasure and ease, the rewards along the way. A body must eat, drink, and live well, for death can come calling when it pleases. As a trained basic skill, sleight of hand. And +3 to either to intelligence or perception. Oh, and you suffer either 1d5 corruption points or 1d5 insanity points. I'm going to start with insanity. We're going down that path. So I'm going to roll that. I will explain what they do at some point. Corruption. Force you to wear... roll on the mutation table. If you get too many of them, insanity points cause you to have complicated mental issues that have actual consequences in game, which I think is very cool. Kind of like Call of Cthulhu issue, where you have, mental health is taken relatively seriously. Okay, so I have a D10. I'm gonna roll. Divide by 2, round up. 9, which rounds is 4.5, which rounds up to 5. So, full on 5 insanity points. not great, but, you know, this is how that works. I am sorry I can't keep this up any longer. Next Thursday, I'm doing another late night. Hopefully you guys will all be there. And what we'll do on that late night is continue with this character, go over how they're linked to the Expectus Primus, kind of expand on the lore a little bit, stuff like that. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate you guys all coming. I know there's only a few of you, but I still appreciate it. Of course, I will put it up on YouTube later if you ever get, really bored and want to watch me for several hours worth of all of these. But if you feel like it, thank you so much. I really. Oh, you see why I need to bed. But I really appreciate you guys watching. Even though none of you said hi in the chat, and I hope to see you later in the week. Bye.